the names of Clorinda and Sylvander to protect their identities. She pointed out in a PS to a letter of the 21st of December, "I entreat you not to mention our correspondence to one on earth. Though I have conscious innocence, my situation is a delicate one." So, and Mrs. McElhose wasn't shy in coming forward. She had written to Miss Nimmo. She wrote, "Miss Nimmo can tell you how earnestly I had long pressed her to make us acquainted. I had a presentiment that we should derive pleasure from the society of each other." I don't think you get that on Twitter anymore. Presentiment's just too long. And Burns didn't find the pleasure, although he didn't find the pleasure he expected from Mrs. McElhose, he did manage to find the time to tarry with Jenny Clow, a maid servant to Mrs. McElhose, and she produced a son in November 1788. So I think that the proof of the brilliance of Burns' intellect is found that in the fact that people with brilliant minds sought him out for conversation and rich and influential people. And because of the type of man he was, Robert Graham of Fintry helped him become an excise man, and for the same reason Patrick Miller offered him the lease in Ellisland Farm. So his contemporaries were shrewd enough to recognise his genius and accept him, the uneducated ploughman, as their intellectual superior, even if a few of them held back more socially. And Burns allowed the ploughman myth to persist, but he could easily have scotched it, because it suited him to be thought of as a rustic genius by those who were not bright enough to recognise what he really was. He was a shrewd man who knew when to be the farmer and when to be the intellectual, and oddly at home in both roles. I guess why not? For far too long the farm worker has been seen as being regarded as beneath his townsmen and peers, and it was only now that his true worth was being acknowledged. In Burns' time, the work of a farmer was endless, grinding, and the rewards miserly. Some farmers would be saying, nothing's changed, I guess. And Burns had lifted him up to a higher plane. And the truth is that Burns was both the ploughman and the intellectual, and it is both we salute him. Burns railed against injustice all his life, and today I think he would still be taking issue with the authorities, he'd be taking issue with local councils, he'd be taking issue with the kirk, or those in the communities whose feet don't match their mouths. And those people who say one thing and say another. And there are 4 people in Stirling Council that he would be railing against and joining me doing that right now. And I'm sure Burns would have his opinion on the wars that we've seen recently. He would have strong views on the banking crisis that's been faced. He would voice his opinions in Europe. And unfortunately, I think he would still find the modern day equivalents of Willie Fisher in churches and councils throughout the land. And he would probably like television and radio, but have plenty to say about their standards, even writing for them, and thus improving them. And of course he would approve the advances in preventative medicine, in social justice, and living standards. I think in the world we live in today, there's quite enough hypocrisy and double dealing to stimulate any man of independent mind, just as there was in Scotland in the 1780s and 1790s. And justice may not be quite so narrowly applied in our day, when we have governments that behave, they say, in the name of the people in an arrogant way, in the way that they did in Burns' time. But they do exist, and they still need exposed. So Burns, I think, relates to us across 2 centuries. He relates to us in brotherhood, on universality, on religion, on nature, on Scotland, on songs and insects. And personally, I believe that in Burns' work, you'll find a lifetime of pleasure, of hope, of inspiration and courage. He stands for friendship, above all, but encompasses both honesty, integrity and truth, and he helps you to know yourself. So through the years, right down to today, Burns speaks clearly to us and points out our hopes and our fears. And if only mankind would listen to him and learn. And perhaps in drinking to Robert Burns' Immortal Memory, we can make a start. So ladies and gentlemen, I give you Immortal Memory of Robert Burns.